All right. Yeah, the proposition that I'd be defending is just the fact that there are two contradictions given folk semantics. Um, yeah, that's basically the position I hold. So do you want me to give
Okay,
you argument?
and by contradictions, well, just to be clear, you're talking about a logical contradiction existing, correct?
Well, I mean, a
Wait,
true
can you
logical.
please hold on? Wait, can you please mute your mic whenever I'm speaking in
Oh,
the
sure,
future?
sure, sure. My
I
fault.
can still
Yeah,
hear the
sure.
air. But go ahead, answer the
Okay.
question.
Yeah, but what I mean is just like there is something that is in folk language held to be a contradiction that is also in folk language. Well, we would be committed to it being true. Yeah.
Okay, what's the argument?
The argument is just basically consider this example you have a book, you have some proposition written on the page 42 of that book, cover page of that book. There is a statement that says the proposition on page 42 is false. Well, to start off, do we agree that that thing is propositional?
Yes, I agree. That's propositional relatively.
What do you mean by relatively?
Please mute your mic whenever you ask me a question. Yeah, thank you. So when I mean by relatively is, of course, generally speaking, it's propositional, but to my agreement of what determines its true value, that will be the relative part. So I'm not saying it being propositional specifically is relative, but I'm just adding the relative part so it can lead into a question such as the following: what do you mean by relative? And then I can clarify by relative, I mean in what determines its true value, in which context is it true under, whether or not it corresponds to reality, whether or not it corresponds to fiction, etc.
All right, so I guess that's just kind of truth theory. Yeah, that's fine. We can talk about that in a second. But yeah, let me just flesh the other part out. Yeah,
That has
so
nothing to do with the truth theory, at least in that respect.
I mean, what makes it true is kind of the thing that defines the.
No, I said true under what context after. The last part of what I said was talking about relative to what context is it true under, not what makes it true specifically in terms of an essential property of truth.
Okay, sure. So yeah, the same thing could make it true, but there are different contexts in which it's true. Sure, I get. Yeah, that's fine. So okay, I'll just go on. Yeah, so if it's propositional, that if the thing on the first page is propositional, and then if you just have the same thing written on page 42, that is also propositional. Yes.
What's written on page 42? I apologize, or the page that you said.
Yeah, the thing written on page 42 is the same thing that was written on the cover page. Or sorry,
okay, that's what I assumed. Yeah, that's fine. Continue.
Okay, sure. So if both of them are propositional, let me just clarify. I kind of misconstrued it. What's written on page 42 is a sentence that says that the shit on the cover page is false. So it just creates I don't know, contradicting loop.
And then what do you believe is written on the cover page? Just for clarity, real quick.
Yeah, the sentence written on, or sorry, the proposition given on page 42 is false.
Okay.
Yeah, so if both of them are propositional, then it creates a series.
But just to clarify, when something is propositional, that just means it has the ability to be true or false.
Yes.
You can grant that, correct?
We got that. Okay.
Continue.
Yeah. So, all right. What's the name? Okay, if both of those are propositional and it creates conceptually they're just a single sentence that is self-referential. It's basically the same as saying,
Wait, by self-referential, what does that mean here? How are they single sentences in which are self-referential?
Sure.
If they're referencing something else.
Oh, okay. When I say conceptually, they're just one thing that references itself. What I mean is the conceptual contents of the thing on the first page. They're talking about the thing on the 42nd page, right? The conceptual.
Yeah, but that would entail. Wait, hold on. Just be clear. That point would be a contradiction, as it wouldn't be self-referential, but rather it would be referential towards something independent of the original sentence.
Well, okay, hold on. What it's referential towards, it doesn't just depend on the location of the thing, the location of the thing. Just
it does. Wait, hold on. Just be clear. If the location is independent of the original, wait, hold on. If the location is the feature of an entity and the location is distinct from the original entity in which we're talking about, that means that it's not self-referential, but rather in reference to something which is distinct from it. It cannot be self-referential, but in reference to something that is distinct from it.
I mean,
That's a contradiction.
okay,
And obviously,
so,
slash destination is a feature of an entity.
okay, but okay, there's 2 points. We'll go those, but like, just to be clear, if you disagree with what I'm saying, just let me finish, and you can say it after, right? Like, I wasn't gonna like give the full points. I was just gonna give the argument for the point, right? So
I'm sorry,
we're
you're
gonna
not
go.
about to control how this debate goes. If you say something and I disagree with it, I may potentially let you finish, or I might interrupt if you be retarded.
Okay, bro, like that's arbitrary, but you know that's why we had moderation. Hello, Crow, what are you doing, dude? Okay, so the next time he does that, please mute him. Okay, so yeah, let me just continue, right? Well, we'll go over the 2 things you said in a second, but let me just flesh out what I was saying, right? What I meant by, okay, so the reason why,
Oh,
like,
so you now have to clarify what you meant because you weren't confident in what you
oh
said
my
initially.
god,
Go ahead.
right? So that's why I like literally fixed what I was saying. I was gonna give the reason for
Yeah,
what I
go
was
ahead.
just
I just
saying.
want to
Don't
clarify that.
clarify. Okay, bad, bro. All right. So yeah, again, the location, I don't see why it would matter. Because like if we're talking about the conceptual content of the proposition, what matters is what the fucking thing on the other page or what the thing on any other location conceptually holds, right? If we're talking about that, then you'd have to, and if you say that like location is a relevant feature, then you'd have to prove or give it any kind of motivation for why, like, given what the given the thing it references, like some sort of conceptually relevant aspect of that is its location. Like for example, if the proposition that is being referred to talks about a specific location, or sorry, it talks about itself in a specific location that is not just referencing back to itself, yeah, sure, like the difference in location might be some relevant aspect conceptually, but if conceptually all it's talking about is like literally the same location that starts it off, which is page 41, then it's not going to be like any relevant feature, or like there's not going to be any motivation for it to be like any relevant feature. So like there's no motivation for like the terms that make it contradictory. Yeah, you could go ahead.
Yes, and so I was muted, so I would like you to mute him, please. Even if he's currently muted, I would still like him to be server muted, girl. I'll wait.
What's config.text?
I'm sorry, please mute him. Thank you. So look, there's multiple things. First, you were stumbling over yourself, so I couldn't really understand a bit of that. And then, I just used my context clues, unlike my opponent. He's incapable of doing that. So, I was able to put together something. I know, girl. But when we talk about the conceptual content, obviously we have to give a conceptual analysis. If by conceptual content, you're talking about the semantics of it. Infinity is funny, bro. Anyways, if by conceptual content, we're talking about the semantics of it, then that will obviously be irrelevant in terms of what we're talking about, even with what you said. However, if by conceptual content, we're talking about the features it has in virtue of the conceptual analysis we grant, then it will be the case that accidentals will be a part of itself. You said the statement is self-referential. The self is defined off of one's essence. The essence, in my opinion, and we're going to talk about this, the essence, in my opinion, since I'm way better than you should take this, includes both accidentals and essentials. So the location, which is an identifying feature, in other words, a property of an entity that will be included in oneself or in one's essence. So it will be the case that it's relevant. If by relevant you mean the feature, if by relevant you mean essential, I don't believe it's essential. But why does it being essential matter? And another thing I noticed is that you tried to burden shit. So look, I want the argument as to why it will be conceptually referencing itself off of. Oh, hold on, let me time this dude real quick. This dude is not about to watch me debate. Hold on. Hold on. Let's see. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so I would need the motivation as to why, rather than me giving a conceptual analysis in which leads to the determination of it being relevant, you would have to establish a reason or motivation as to why, oh, this dude's not also going to watch me debate. Hold on, let me get this dude as well. I apologize. Okay. Anyways, wait, chill, Parlar, if you're talking. Anyways, so I would need an argument as to why it's conceptually irrelevant, as well as an argument as to why it is self-referencing rather than you just burden shifting for no reason. So it seems to be the case that there is a clear feature in which it does not possess, however, it's still talking about, therefore cannot be self-referential. But you're making the claim that it is self-referential, nonsense is referential to something else independent of it, seemingly, as we're talking about currently. So if the statement X says statement Y is not true, then it's not talking about the contents of statement X. It's not talking about the contents of oneself, but rather the contents of another thing, such as statement Y being false. So please give an argument against that.
Okay, so well, just to be clear, there's multiple claims. I'll just like repeat back. Don't mute him just yet, right? Like I'll repeat back the claims, and like he can tell me if I have them correctly, right? So for the first claim is conceptual content. If what I mean by that is semantics, then it's not relevant. And conceptual content, if what I mean by that is like the fucking essential and accidental properties of the thing, then like yeah, sure that is relevant. But then I would need to give an argument for why the location of a thing or like any kind of accidental property of a thing is irrelevant. And the other things he said was the fact that there is some accidental property that is a part of one thing but not a part of the other thing makes them distinct from the other. And if they are distinct, that means that it's not referencing itself. Infinity, that's all you said, right?
Look, I'm not here to amp you on how to track. I'll repeat some arguments at the end if I deem it to be relevant, but just to clarify for the judge actually, but not for you. So maybe you should pay attention this time so you can get a little tip here. What I said was, and I'm not saying that this isn't what he repeated, I just want to clarify for the judge. What I said was, if it is the case he's talking about semantics, then it would not follow that the argument, or I apologize, the sentence is self-referential because the semantics do not reference themselves, obviously. The sentence contents don't reference the sentence contents, obviously, but rather references the semantics, or I apologize, what the sentence independent of oneself entails. So statement X talks about what statement Y entails in terms of true value, rather than what statement X entails in terms of true value, or what statement X entails in terms of any feature at all. So that's the one point that I made, at least. You can respond to that first one.
Okay, so yeah, if it's semantics, then it's irrelevant. It's just talking about what it like the features or whatever. Sure. So I mean, yeah. Well, okay. Let me just get one like weird slip and claim out of the way, like the whole like because I'm better.
I'm sorry. Everything I said was clear. Just because you're not articulate doesn't mean I'm not.
All right.
Don't try to add the little slithery yo-turn rhetoric shit there.
Yeah, I was okay. I'm not trying to add any rhetoric, dude. Cool. What are you doing? Like, okay, so yeah, I mean, just like to make it clear, right? Like the shit that was said about oh yeah, I'm the better debater. We should take the semantic. Like, I'm not gonna let that go through. We could go with that later. But yeah, for the more relevant points, yeah, like sure. So if semantics then okay, when we're conceptually analyzing something, well, like something's concept, it is going to be like containing the things it's supposed to mean. Something it means that like that's trivially just defined as like the concept of it that we hold, like the concept of senju that I hold would be what it means to be senju to me, right? So like I mean the irrelevancy, I just don't see that like there. Like I don't see like any fucking motivation for that there, given like the definition that I just gave. Fucking conceptual content effect essential. Yeah, and then like the whole if it's an accidental part. Yeah, I never disagreed with it being an accidental part that is like present in one and not present in the other. What I disagree with is just that it's like some relevant part that makes like any kind of relevant change in conceptual identity, right? I don't know why like this. I don't know why I would subscribe to this kind of like fucking model of accidental and essential properties that says that accidental properties of a thing have any kind of like relevant fucking presence in the concept of that thing, right? So like just because something has like an accidental part, I don't know why that would be relevant. He asked me for the argument for why it's irrelevant, right? But like initially the claim that I made was literally just the fact that like if I don't see any argument for its relevance, then I don't see why it would fit the condition to be something distinct. And if it doesn't fit the condition to be something distinct conceptually, right? Then it would be like prima facie at least conceptually identical. So like the fucking conditions for the proposition, the conditions for it being a contradiction, they're not fulfilled, right? What's his name? Yeah, and he made the claim that it is like contradictory to say that it's like fucking self-referential. So like the burden would be on him.
Look, so obviously in my case it's true, it will be a contradiction here. And are you done with the Ramble Fest? I'm sorry, I don't think I was here for that retarded ass podcast. Answer yes or no.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
Okay, so since you're too afraid to talk, I'm just gonna assume you're done. So please, Madam Kuro. Please meet him, Carl.
Right now, bro.
Let me know when he was muted. I can't see my screen right now. I'm lagging.
Yo, did you just kiss that dude?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so when we talk about the distinction, the reason why I said, wait, I apologize, can y'all chill real quick? The reason why I said the semantics wouldn't be relevant is because not the semantics itself, but just to be clear, the reason why I talked about the relevancy when it comes to semantics is because the distinction will be irrelevant, because if it is the case that something holds semantics, which obviously the conceptual analysis would infer this concept or this entity holding semantics, the semantics will be given off of, obviously granted off of, obviously posited off of, I have to use 3 different words because you're fucking retarded, it will be given off of the features the entity holds in the first place. The semantics / definition / description, all these words I'm using so you can understand, okay? Nobody's calling me a rat, okay? It would obviously be granted off of the features in which the entity holds. And then for the last point, yes, it would be a contradiction if what I'm saying is true. If you make the claim that X is true, and then I make the claim that Y, which is not X, is true, if not X is true, which is Y, then obviously tautologically, not X will be true, which entails X isn't true. So you've yet to respond and give an actual complete argument for dialethism rather than just jumping around trying to be rhetorical with the prima facie shit that you tried to slip in, by the way. I don't grant that being prima facie evidence. What's the argument as to why that's prima facie motivated? And then additionally, what's the evidence as to why we should accept prima facie justification in a setting, a formal setting at that, such as this? And I'm not done, by the way. When you say, well, no, why I would accept your thesis of essence. Well, I don't really care. I obviously don't know why I would accept your thesis. You can just say that for anything. I don't know if this is what the comp taught you to do or something like that while you're being a rat right now. You don't have to accept my thesis of what is considered to be a part of essence or what's considered to be relevant within essence or not. I don't care if you accept it. The same reason that you don't have to accept mine, I don't have to accept yours. And we're currently going off of your argument. You're on the affirmative. You're trying to affirm the retarded position known as dialethism, which you're conflating right now, but we don't even have to talk about your conflation with what dialethism is or what it entails. Let's talk about the actual relevant parts. Additionally, I don't care if it is relevant towards the essence. It doesn't have to be relevant towards the essence. The entire point is I want you to agree for the future that accidentals, because I never said you disagreed, this is the tracking error number 8, or probably number 18, but I never said you didn't agree. I'm just clarifying for the future because it may possibly be relevant in the future that I posit accidentals to be a part of the essence of one entity or one self. If you grant that, that's completely fine. That's why we're clarifying now. We grant that. Okay, sure. Now, when we're talking about the contents of the self-reference statement, if it is the case that the contents reference the contents, it will be self-referential. If it's not the case that the contents reference the contents, then it wouldn't be self-referential. That's tautological. So it seems to be the case that the statement is self-referential or the sentence is self-referential, I apologize, if and only if the contents are in reference to itself. It seems to be the case that the contents are in reference to something not of itself but independent of itself, such as Y instead of it being X, which is the original statement. Therefore, your argument falls. If you have an argument as to why, and this is what I was asking for initially, this is the main relevant burden, which he has yet to fulfill, Archie. What is the argument as to why the statement not references, or it doesn't reference the independent statement, but rather the dependent statement, which is itself? Give the argument. Stop running around, bitch.
Alright, okay, but firstly though, okay, don't do this weird shit when you finish and you're like, don't finish, and then you...
I'm sorry, your mic is cutting out. Just give the argument.
Alright, bro. Say all you want, like in one go, bro. It's probably better to be productive.
I don't know what the fuck you just said.
A lot of things said. I'll try to go over the things that I remember.
Well, yeah, that's what happens in the debate.
No,
a lot of points are made, people speak.
Bro, what are you... Okay.
He's begging now.
What is the moderator doing? Okay, sure. So, okay. So, yeah, the things that I remembered, repeat. Okay, we could go over that. Anything I, like, didn't remember, we could go over that later. Yeah, so firstly was, like, the argument for prima facie justification and why what I'm saying is prima facie justified. It's not in order, by the way. Then it was, shit, what was it? Like, yeah, me not granting something or me not being convinced of something that he doesn't see why that matters. In the same way as, like, he could fucking not grant what I said, and like that would be fine. So sorry, I could not grant what he said, and that would be fine. The other thing, like the main burden that he wants me to prove is like why it references itself or whatever. And I made the initial argument, so I'm on the affirmative or whatever. So yeah, like these are roughly the things that I remember. There's like other things we could go about later, but sure. So firstly, for the prima facie shit, it's pretty simple that like in the absence of any other evidence, in the absence of like any other new evidence, prima facie shit is taken to be like I don't know, good for prior building, like it's relevant and conducive towards like some hypothesis having higher priors. Given some data, given the absence of data, then the other hypothesis, right? So obviously it builds some credence in the absence of any new evidence or whatever. So it's basically like, okay, if I'm prima facie justified in something, then if there's no other evidence given against it, that's going to be like credence for it, right? Or that's going to be some relevant amount of credence for it. The reason I am prima facie justified, that like it's like fucking not a relevant distinction, or these things aren't relevant, or like the location isn't relevant, is simply because, okay, when we talk about something's conceptual identity, we talk about, yeah, as you said, like I guess like the essential properties or whatever, right? Now, if it's something, if like an accidental property, if a quote unquote part of it, if not present, it doesn't change anything in its identity, like relevantly at least, then what that would mean is like it's not like at face value at least, it's not some like fucking relevant method, or relevant thing, right? And usually if we have like a claim going about like any entity that says that, yo, it is relevant towards X, it's relevant towards Y, without any seeming given reason or motivation for it, usually we would prima facie have credences for like, you know, it not to be, right? But even if we don't like these credences, and like these credences would normally just extend in the context of the debate. So it's not just like me not granting the argument, it's just that like there is no credence for the argument that, you know, usually rational agents wouldn't grant, right? Okay, the other thing, like the burden shit, yeah, I mean, okay, the burden that I had, or like this claim that I originally made, yeah, I am affirming the dialethism thesis, but that doesn't mean that like at every point in time in the debate I'm going to be on the affirmative, right? Like if the claim was, yeah, it's contradictory to say that this thing is self-referential, yeah, I mean, that is not my burden. That is not like a claim that I'm actively making. That is a claim that you made. All I have to do is defend why I can call it self-referential and it not be contradictory, right? With the semantic shit, what you were saying was, shit, what was it? With semantics, you were saying that like, semantics derive off of its, the semantics of a thing derive off of its conceptual properties. Well, no, I don't think they're derived off of its conceptual properties. I think they are its conceptual properties, right? I think it's like an identity relation. I don't know why it would be like some reason, right? That's why if it is an identity relation, then they would be just as fucking relevant as like the conceptual properties that you grant are relevant, right? So that would be that thing. Yeah, the fucking something is self-referential if it references itself. This thing references a distinct property. Well, yeah, okay. If X references Y, and then if X references the contents of Y, and the contents of Y are referencing back to X, I would think that even if Y is accidentally distinct, the conceptual property, which is, it's just transitively going to come back to X, right? Because X is just making the claim that, you know, yo, I'm referencing whatever the fuck Y references, and Y is referencing X, right? So if you look at it conceptually, if we remove the location aspect, because none of the fucking sentences are talking about the location, that's, I think, the standard that I would hold for something being relevant, like it talks about it, it aims to do it. If you do that, then, you know, it just seems to be, oh yeah, I'm talking about myself, right? So yeah, I think I'm done. I don't want to like say that many things. You could go.
Yo, Flash, look at DMs. Okay. Is he muted?
No, he's not. He's not muted.
Oh, please mute him. Oh, okay, he's muted now. So one, I don't care. Just to clarify, this is what he said. All the other claims I'm going to go about later. So for the judge, I don't care if he can't track or not, nigga. I'm just trying to win. I am going to win, obviously, because I'm way better than him. So if he can't track, that's his fault. If he wants me to repeat something, I might do it depending on how kind I feel. If you want me to repeat something, you're the judge. So obviously I'm going to repeat it. So I don't really care about his lack of tracking when it comes to him pushing our claims forward later because he can't track himself. Then the claims still stand for the judge. Just clarify. The claims are still up. The claims are 100% still up. Now, if he wants to respond to them, he can. I'll just beat him on it. I'll just beat him on it badly like I am currently. If he doesn't, then that's too bad. Anyways. Now, when you say... what point should I talk about first? Yeah, so one, why do you believe, and there's multiple burdens, but let's clarify this one, starting off the point ramble. One, why do you believe the meaning of something and then what that something is identical? Because that's the claim you made. I understand you're probably going to either one, fail to justify the burden, or two, you're going to make the claim or make the comment that you never asserted that. But I'm sure the judge and the moderator heard you make the claim that the meaning of something is what you take to be that entity as, or that feature as. When I talked about the conceptual analysis leading into features in which conceptually are granted or exist for an entity, and then that leads into, meaning there's a third step, that leads into the meaning of the features, potentially, by the way, potentially, you made the comment that, well, I don't even believe that's true. I believe there's an identity relationship between the meaning of a statement or a feature, I apologize, and then the feature itself. So I'm going to ask for the argument for that. What's the argument as to why a feature cannot exist independent of meaning? Or even with not an identity relation, but instead a causal relation or explanatory relation, which doesn't entail any identity relationship at all. It could just be the case that X in every single scenario causes Y, or X in every single scenario is corresponding with Y. Does that mean that they're identical? No. Now, when you talk about accidental distinctions, I didn't bring up the location I apologize. I didn't bring up the location feature, which you granted was a feature. The destination/location of an entity would be a feature of the entity. I never brought that up to share, or I apologize, explain why those two statements wouldn't be self-referential. What I brought it up to explain or display for the judge and moderator, because I'm not even debating you, you're not even listening. What I brought it up to display or highlight towards the debate, or I apologize, towards the moderator and the judge, was the fact that the statements are not identical in the first place. Because for something to be identical, X is identical if and only if everything that's true of X is also true of Y. So X and Y are only identical under that condition. It is not the case, actually, that everything that's true of X is identical with Y. An example would be the location, because accidentals will be a part of that essence. It cannot be the case that X, which has all properties or has a set of properties C, can be Y, which doesn't have the entire set of C. That would be a contradiction. Therefore, there's no identity relation. And then additionally, I would like to add upon, why isn't it just the case that instead of X referencing X, it would be X referencing Y, which references X, meaning it isn't self-referential, but rather it's just referencing something which references itself, meaning that X references Y, Y references X. What's the problem with that? Rather than you concluding that it's self-referential, instead of, and I'm going to say this again so you can get into your thick skull, instead of it just makes X referencing something which references or mentions X. I don't see a problem with that. Now to go to the many other points you made. When you say prima facie is taken to be good for prior building, I don't grant it at all. I don't believe it's taken to be good for prior building. Additionally, actually, when you make the claim that prima facie is something you use when there's a lack of evidence for the contrary, I can grant that it lends credence for some belief systems, not mine, not anybody competent, but some belief system. It can lead credence, or in other words, a reason, not a good reason, not a bad reason, but a reason depending on the context. That's going to be the quality. That's what the determination of quality for the reason is. It's depending on the context, but in context, it can provide a reason to form a belief. Does it provide a reason to believe that something is true? I don't believe it does in most scenarios. Does it provide a reason in which is good? I don't believe it does in most scenarios. But if you make the assessment that prima facie justification or motivation is something that at least gives one reason to form a belief, that's completely fine. But whether or not that is a good enough reason is going to be put into question. Whether or not that is a reason which stands is going to be put into question. Whether or not that reason infers any likelihood at all is going to be put into question, because obviously an epistemological motivation or an epistemological account for justification of an event is going to be distinct from actual justification. So I don't care about you having a reason to believe in something, or you believing that that reason exists not only dependent of you, but rather dependent of everybody else or everybody else's belief system. Not everybody has to hold the same belief system in which one reason is good enough to form prima facie justification. Additionally, even though you committed an argument for ignorance, that's irrelevant currently. We can move past that. And then for the last point, my bad. I agree that you being in the affirmative, and this actually would be the last point. I agree, you being in the affirmative doesn't mean that you're going to affirm literally everything in the debate, or you're always in the affirmative during the debate. That's not the claim I made. I never made that judgment. I never said that at all. That never came out of my fucking mouth. Stop bringing up points or responding to non-existent points, D1. Now, what I did say was, you are on the affirmative. That's all I said at that point. But if you would like further clarity before making up shit that I said, which I didn't say, then you should ask that maybe. That's, a good point of a debater. Asking questions. Ask Time, he does it a lot. Ask Cynthia, he does it a lot. Ask Yuki, he does it a lot. Moving on though. So it is the case that I responded to your comment because you made the claim that X is self-referential, blah, 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 contradiction, which held a presupposition. My bad for the stutter, that was bad. Anyways, it held a presupposition. That's the reason why I made the comment which responded to that. Now, even if I don't justify my point, yeah, it's your time. anyways. Now, even if I don't give proper motivation, which I believe I completely gave proper motivation, even if I don't give proper motivation, it is the case that you still have to justify your point, because if you are on the affirmative when it comes to a position, and then one of the assertions you make in which is correlated to your argument relevantly has a presupposition in which we're questioning currently, if I lack the motivation for explanatory power towards my point, and then you also lack the motivation for explanatory power towards my point or towards your point, in virtual what my position is, simply you would be lost, you would lose, because there's no motivation overall for the position. Okay, so when you say rational agents wouldn't grant that, that's just a claim. There's no argument, my nigga. All you're doing is going circling, nigga.
Whoa, let's calm down there. Hard R, whoa.
Whoa, nigga, why didn't you interrupt me to say that? True.
Well, I'm unmuted. Okay, sure.
Okay, wait, no, do not respond. Hey, type the points out, bro. We need a judge, bro.
I'm pretty sure he just said that Kodo could take over. That's what Archie said. Oh,
Damn,
that was
bro.
it.
Wait, we can have mono, bro. Wait, no, I'm trolling.
What?
We could just continue when Archie comes back.
Wait, when he bro, no.
I don't know, bro. We could just continue on our day.
Oh, wait, hold on. Archie said before he left that Infinity was winning, so unless...
Okay, wait, send that real quick. But yeah, Repellent, we could just continue in the initial time that we agreed. We can either restart if you want or something.
Initial time? No, make plans.
Yo, Infinity, you down to debate real quick?
No.
Yeah, but can we just overall?
What
It doesn't matter then. So,
I don't know what you just said.
Yeah, I was just saying that. Oh damn! Oh, no, I can't fix my mic and shit. Like I don't know how to fix it. But what's the name, bro? Okay, Infinity. What if he finish it right now and you just send Archie the rec, dude?
No, he's not gonna watch that recording. But yeah, we can look. Just to save your pride, we can finish later on the date we agreed upon in the first time.
Yeah, so like on that day I made.
You made plans. I'm cutting. I ain't gonna lie, your mic is either I'm cutting out or your mic is. I don't know.
No, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll just say I made plans and I'll meet.
His mic is amazing.
What? Okay, then we can just debate another day then.
Alright, that's cool.
Alright, bro.
Alright.
Guys.
Easy claps. Moving on. Hey, Zinni, up and Roberts.